Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us. We're going to get a few moments here to let everyone kind of funnel in the meeting room. I hope you're doing well this morning.
It's cooler this morning, which makes me happy.
It is. It is
I
cooler. We're
was
getting
like,
a little bit
oh,
closer to that fall weather, just a
yes,
little bit subtle.
we need it though.
Yeah. Hey, good morning. Thank you all for joining us this morning. If you're just now joining us, let us know. I know we're a couple weeks out from it, but let us know. I always like to do an icebreaker. What your favorite Olympic sport was to watch. And I know
Um,
there are many options. So if you have two, feel free to put in two.
put them in the chat.
Put them in the chat.
Okay, I'm going to participate too. Okay, I don't remember what it was, but it was whatever, rhythmic swimming used to be, and now it's like something
There's so
crazy.
many. Yeah, I'm with you. Gymnastics is great. Got relay. Yeah, that's such a good point. I think the synchronized swimming was such a fun one to watch for sure.
Yeah, and I totally spelled it wrong. Rhythmic.
Hey,
Anyway,
there's so
whatever
many.
it was.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. If you're just now joining us, the question for this morning is, what was your favorite Olympic sport to watch? And if you have two, feel free to put in a couple. We got relay, rhythmic swimming. I don't even think I could name them all, honestly.
I don't either. There's
Yeah,
only what, like 30 or something, but
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know. When you
yeah,
try to think of them all, it's overwhelming.
yeah.
I don't know what to watch on TV now, too, now that it's over.
Oh, I feel the same way.
I was glued.
Yes.
My cousin also, she is works as a recruiter, and she was like, no, I can't. I mean, she was kidding, but somebody scheduled a meeting during one of the event times, and she was like, dude, I'm gonna be watching that. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, come on now. You know better than that.
Yeah, it was really funny.
That is hilarious. I'm glad you made that clear. I think I did the same thing with a couple of my friends. So, well, awesome. Well, hey, we're a couple minutes past the hour. I do not want to delay. So, hey, thank you, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jordan McIntosh. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for Goodwill of North Georgia, and I will also serve as your moderator for today. And welcome. Welcome to our Goodwill Career Connector Speaker Series. Whether you're joining us from home, whether you're joining us from the office, whether you're joining us from the gym, we really appreciate you taking some time to be with us here this morning. If you're unfamiliar with this series, the goal is a simple one. It's to help you upskill, reskill, and give you an edge in your professional journey. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, I hope you stick around. We have a wonderful topic, as you can see, on emotional intelligence in the workplace. I would also be remiss if I didn't have an opportunity to speak about Goodwill and our mission. The mission of Goodwill is also a simple one. It's to put people to work. And because of your purchases and your generous donations, we've been able to put over 125,000 people to work over the past 5 years. So thank you so much for that. Now I have the opportunity to almost introduce our speaker, but before I do have a few housekeeping rules to go over. The first one is that this session is being recorded. So if you have to step out, if you have to take a call, or if you need to take a break, please know that it will be provided to you after the session. The second thing I want to note here is that the chat function is enabled, and I do encourage you to interact with our presenter today. We also do have some poll questions, so as those come up, please feel free to utilize those. And there will be a handout for you to follow along should you wish. And then last but not least, Q&A will be enabled, and there will be some time at the end of this presentation to answer as many of those questions as we possibly can. We will have about 10 minutes for that. So I just wanted to say that as we begin today's presentation. Now, without further ado, I do have the privilege of introducing our speaker who we're honored to have with us today, Holly Crawford. Holly has been a certified career coach, speaker, author, and national career expert since 2002. Her company, Create Your Career Path, is headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, and she is regularly featured in the media, including the U.S. News, Forbes, CNN, Money Magazine, and the Wall Street Journal. She also holds an undergraduate and graduate degrees from Vanderbilt University and the University of Illinois. With over 2,500 success stories, her team of coaches helps professionals enjoy their jobs so much that they want to jump out of bed in the morning to go to work. Their website is createyourcareerpath.com, and we're so honored to have her here with us today. Holly, thank you so much for being with us this morning. The floor is now yours.
Thank you, Jordan. Greatly appreciate it. And thank you all for being here today. This is a really big topic. Most of you have probably heard about emotional intelligence in the workplace and also leveraging it for your job search as well. But I think not everyone knows kind of the ins and outs of it. It's a big buzzword that's been around for a long time, but it's a critically important skill to be able to move forward in your career. And I guess one of the things that I wanted to start out with, and then we'll dive into the slides, is I was giving a presentation just a couple months ago to a group of, or a conference of engineers, and there was a senior level executive there. And everyone in the room was talking about what are the top leadership strengths? Like, what are the best leaders' strengths that a leader can have? And the answer is it's any strength that you have. There's no like perfect combination of strengths. But what he said, which I think is so important and true, is the best way to grow and develop professionally is self-awareness. And that's what emotional intelligence is all about. So, as Jordan said, I'm a certified career coach. I've been coaching and training for a long time. My gray hair, luckily for me, is just a little bit underneath, so it's harder to see. And the advice we're going to give you today is advice that we give to all of our clients. We have a very similar mission to Goodwill, and that helping people find jobs, but jobs that are a really great fit for them and leverage their strengths and that they truly enjoy. And I would recommend kind of picking and choosing which piece of advice makes the most sense for you as we progress. We're happy to share the slides with you. I'll show you how to do that in just a few moments. And also, as a reminder, you'll get the recording too, so you can always pick up on some of the advice later on. So first of all, if we take a look at this next slide, the reason why emotional intelligence is so important is because communication and conflicts that come up in the workplace can really stall people's professional development and growth, but also our work performance. And if you look at this slide, when I was first starting to present on this topic a long time ago, a huge number of difficulties within organizations, 60 to 80%, actually come from less than perfect or working and good relationships between people, not because there's a lack in skill or experience. And a typical manager spends between 25 and 40% of their time, which is a lot, dealing with workplace issues. That's 1 to 2 work days of every week, which is a lot of time, which tells us how important emotional intelligence is and communication as an extension of that, if you will. And the other reason why this is so important, this is our career model that we use with our clients to help them determine the right job for them, is work environment and what it's like where you work, not just the culture, but the communication and your relationships with coworkers and your boss. It's a make or break for your career success and satisfaction. So that's part of why this is so important as well. So here's what we're going to talk about today: how and we define emotional intelligence and kind of in general, three foundational tools to help you improve and increase your emotional intelligence. We'll give you resources along the way, and as Jordan said, we'll do Q&A at the end as well. If anyone would like a copy of our slides, you can feel free to email us at admin@createyourcareerpath.com. It's listed on the slide here. We'd be happy to share those with you. So let's take a look first at how emotional intelligence is defined. And some of you may have heard it called EQ or EI, different kind of acronyms for it. So emotional intelligence basically is the ability to understand, leverage, use, manage your emotions in a positive and like productive way so that you can achieve multiple goals, whether it's relieving stress for yourself or helping other people do so and kind of calming conflict, communicate more effectively, empathize with other people so you understand where they're coming from, and overcome challenges and diffuse conflict if it comes up. So emotional intelligence basically helps you be a better person, better manager, employee, etc., because you're self-aware. It enables you to build stronger relationships at work and achieve your career goals. And it can also help you be more clued into what your feelings and emotions are, turn your intentions into action and kind of channel those emotions in the right direction, and also make smarter decisions in your career path because you're leveraging those feelings in the right way, not letting them take over, so to speak. So if we take a look at this next slide, there's kind of two categories, if you will, and then on the next one, there's four elements. But so broad scope categories of emotional intelligence are basic things on the left-hand side that are practical first, right? Getting to work on time, getting your work done, finishing what you promise you will finish, being reliable, meeting deadlines. Those are some basic practical things that actually do fall under emotional intelligence that we all need to do in order to be successful at work. And then there's the emotional side of EQ, and that's that you feel respected at work, that you're a good listener, that you're good at networking, you're good at relationship building or management. And we really, as professionals, need to focus on both of these because they're both critically important and they impact our success at work as well as our relationships at work too. And if we take a look at the next slide, there's kind of four basic elements, if you will, under that umbrella of practical and emotional, like we were just talking about. The first one is, we've already said it several times, this sense of self-awareness, like you understand what's going on for you and how it may be impacting your actions and maybe your decision making. For example, do you need to sleep on something overnight because you're kind of worked up about it? Or do you need to have a conversation with someone in person versus texting this to them because it could be a little bit touchy? So a couple of examples of the first one are on here. Can you tell and do you have a sense of when something is not as it seems? Like if someone is saying, yes, they're willing to work on something, but you really feel like they're hesitant about it, that self-awareness is something that you want to pay attention to and kind of call it out and talk about it. Are you aware of your nonverbal communication and how it impacts others? I used to work with a woman who honestly, nobody really liked her. We worked at a university and she was just very difficult. She was demanding. Her tone and demeanor was just not cordial at all. And it was interesting because I think that at some point someone finally, mentioned something to her and she was completely caught off guard by that. And so this is like being aware of how you're coming across and taking ownership and responsibility of that, not just saying, well, that's your problem. You have to, you took it the wrong way. We both have to take responsibility, both people in a conversation and a relationship, for how it's going. Number two is self-management. Can you stay calm when you need to? Do you know when to ask for help? These are just two examples there. Number three is social awareness. Can you tell when you're making someone else or your team uncomfortable? Are you able to kind of calm things down when needed, make them more comfortable? Are you aware when someone is saying one thing, but they really kind of mean another? And then finally, relationship management is also important to attend to in terms of emotional intelligence. Do you listen really effectively? Do you use communication effectively, whether it's to diffuse conflict, manage change, or even lift someone up and be a positive force? So there are foundational tools and kind of, and I guess I shouldn't really say tools for this one, but the foundational elements that we need to have in place for effective emotional intelligence in the workplace are these 6 things here. And these are things that we ask you to do in order to improve your EI or EQ. And we hope that other people are doing it as well. We all need to have a sense of trust within our work environment, at least to a certain extent. We can trust the other people to do their job and vice versa. We all want to have a sense of, at least to a certain extent, of empathy. We don't have to be best friends with the people we work with, but to understand where someone else is coming from can help you work with them more effectively and vice versa. Honesty, that people are going to be honest with you and upfront. Effective or having an effective feedback loop, that you know that your feedback and input is valued within your organization and vice versa, and understanding and listening skills as well. These are the things that we always want people to be working on, and to notice if any of these pieces are missing within their work environment or relationships, because that can tell you what may be going wrong or causing any of the problems or possible issues. And some of the common obstacles to emotional intelligence, and if we could launch our first poll here, that would be fantastic, is difficulty regulating your emotions, not always understanding how to communicate effectively. I'm guilty of that too. It happens sometimes. And then finally, struggling with or being uncertain about how to read certain situations. And we'd love to know if any of these or which of these obstacles most applies to you. This will be our first poll, and we can just launch them and do the other 2 a little bit later on. But if you do our first one, that would be great. And if there's a different difficulty that you have, or difficult or other challenge to emotional intelligence, totally okay. These are just the most common we find with our clients. So pick one of these for the moment, if you will. And if we can share our results in a moment, that would be great. I'm going to talk about our 3 foundational tools that we're going to start to discuss as people are completing the poll. The foundational tools we want you to think about and consider. And actually, what I should say here is these are the action steps specifically. So the tools that we would suggest and recommend you work on in order to improve your emotional intelligence. These are the things that can help as a starting point. There's lots of others, but these are the 3 we like to focus on with our clients. So the first one is creating an agreement with people about how we can work together effectively. The second one is empathetic listening. And the third one is curiosity. And I'll pause here for a moment. If we can share our poll results, that would be great. And it could be me if you already are, and I just like minimized it. Sorry if that was me. Okay. All right, so we'll share those in just a second. So let's talk about tool number 1, and this is creating an agreement. So one of the things that we highly recommend creating, whether it's informally or formally, it can be either one. And we would say having an agreement, so to speak, or an arrangement with anyone that you work with, your manager, your coworkers, et cetera, can be incredibly helpful and useful. And here's what we mean by an agreement. If you can talk with your coworkers and your manager, et cetera, as appropriate about how you can communicate effectively together, what kind of tasks that you're each supposed to be performing, how often you need to be meeting, and what do those meetings need to be about, which roles do you play within the project that you're working on, or the, wherever it is that you're working. It's a great idea to make an agreement also for how you all can handle conflict, disagreements, feedback, etc. Because when you have this conversation, not just about the tasks at work, but about how you work together or can work together more effectively, things are going to just be that much more open and more effective as a result. So don't just do the work, talk about how you're doing the work and how you all can work together more effectively. So when you have this conversation with someone, you can say, look, I'd like to work together more effectively. And I had some ideas. Is it okay if we talk about this for a few minutes? Get their permission to, talk about it at that time, get their ideas, ask them their opinion first, but always have suggestions. And there could be a couple of questions that you do like as an icebreaker to start out the conversation. How can we work together more effectively? How can we get through this project collaboratively? These are great open-ended questions that we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment that will help you move towards a more common ground in terms of how you work together effectively and more productively. As part of the agreement, it's also good, if you look at this next slide, to make sure that everyone is clear about the objectives, the goals, and the tasks that you're working on. Who plays what role in the group, and making sure that clarity of roles is present so that you know who's responsible for what. Sometimes that role confusion can actually cause a lot of problems. Who's the leader? Who's the scribe? Who's supposed to do X, Y, Z? It's a good idea to talk too about challenges that you've encountered in the past and challenges you may encounter in the future. And milestones along the way can be helpful to discuss too, because that helps you gauge your progress towards that project completion and achieving your goal. So how are we going to know that things are working together more effectively and we're accomplishing our tasks, et cetera? So let's take a look at the next slide. And as part of the agreement, what we're talking about here too is communication and how we can communicate together more effectively. Everything involves communication. We can't, as humans, not communicate. What we wear communicates something. The kind of car we drive, like all these different, every choice that we make in our lives. And I get there's financial things for things too, of course. But what we choose to, how we choose to spend our time communicates something about our values and priorities. And if you need to have a touchy situation with someone, and this is part of what we want to discuss for just a second today, too, on this slide, it's a really good idea to not avoid having the conversation, but go in and set the tone of the conversation before. Don't just walk into someone's space or office or whatever and just launch into a diatribe of complaints. Let them know in advance you need to talk about something touchy. So it could be, hey, Shannon, I need to talk about something with you that could be a little bit difficult or touchy. Do you mind if we discuss this now, or is later a better time? Ask permission to share and let them talk after you share what your concern is or feedback is. Don't just shut them down. And the whole time you're having any kind of conversation with someone, whether it's touchy or not, please make sure that you're paying attention to your body language, that you're making eye contact with them to show that you're really listening. Nod to show understanding and empathy. Lean forward, have your hands in your lap if that's best for you to manage your nerves or whatever it is. So make sure that your communication is as solid and positive as it can be in that moment, and that will help deal with any type of touchy situation in particular. The reason why creating an agreement can be so helpful for people is it can improve your professional relationships for 3 reasons. Number one, it empowers each person in the relationship or in the team to take responsibility for how things are going. It establishes boundaries for a safe space where people can feel free to voice their opinion, give feedback, ask for help, for example. And it creates these ground rules for clarity. So there isn't any confusion about who's supposed to do what, how we're going to handle situations, how we're going to celebrate what we're doing, etc. Everything is clear and upfront. And it is a good idea to periodically update your agreement as needs and situations and goals and projects change. Let's talk about tool number 2, and this is empathetic listening. I know that most of us have probably heard about you're supposed to be a good listener. Okay, ad nauseum, right? Empathetic listening is really, really critical because I think a lot of people feel like they are good listeners, but they're not as good as they think they are, and myself included. I'm the same way. If I'm in a rush or I know I have some advice to give someone it happens to me. Like I might walk away too quickly. I might not take the time to really listen. I might be thinking of the thing I want to say next versus truly listening to the other person's feelings. And two-way communication is critical in the workplace as well as in our personal lives. And it's really important to be able to not just listen, but be able to express empathy and show understanding. In coaching, there are three levels of listening, and this is what we wanted to share with you all to help improve your own emotional intelligence. Number one is level one. This is your internal listening, where you're saying to yourself, I'm hungry, it's time for lunch, this meeting is going too long, whatever is going on inside of your head. We need that internal listening to take care of ourselves, right? But we have to get outside of ourselves more so in order to be more emotionally intelligent and get into levels 2 and 3. And this is focus listening. 2 is where you're focused on the other person. You're really listening to everything that they're saying, but also their nonverbals and their nuances. Are they saying, one thing, but they really mean another? Or do you feel like there's something that's unsaid that, you want to kind of bring up and try to invite them to share because it could be a really big deal and helpful? And level 3 global listening is the big one where we're trying to stay in touch with and in tune with our intuition as much as possible. If you look at the left-hand side of the slide here, this is the energy between the two of you. Is it positive, negative, or in between? What's the mood or the tone of the conversation? Are things kind of going downhill, or are they improving in a good way? And the way to get into levels 2 and 3 listening is to be quiet sometimes, not share your opinion for a moment. Let the person talk and vent for a second so they feel heard. Then maybe ask a good question versus giving advice. Calm yourself down, slow down your talking sometimes too. Step over nothing. If they seem to be saying one thing, but do they feel like, or does it seem like they're really wanting to say something else, don't step over that. Call it out and talk about it. And our third poll here, oh, yeah, if you can do the polls, that'd be great. We've been having a little bit of trouble with that. Thanks for your patience there. But bottom line is, if you can slow yourself down to be a better listener, that's the key point here. Now, what I want to suggest is a really good active listening exercise that you can practice with friend or family member, is this empathetic listening exercise where someone tells you, and you can ask them to practice with you, or you don't have to tell them either way, but have someone tell you about, or when they're telling you about a problem or challenge they're facing, and you are only allowed to reflect back what they say and paraphrase as well. You're not allowed to ask questions. You're not allowed to give advice. It seems easy, but it is really, really hard because it's human nature for us to want to jump in and help. So practice this a little bit. It's a little bit of like holding yourself back with what we would naturally do and really take the time to listen. When you paraphrase back what they're saying, you're just repeating back. For example, I heard you say this, this, and this, that sounds hard or whatever it is. And that's all. It's a really good practice exercise you can do with friends or family. And the next slide we wanted to just share with you from the Gallup organization. You all have probably heard of the Gallup poll research, all of that. This is what they assert are their 4 needs of followers for everyone within any type of organization. We all, as employees, want to have a sense of trust, compassion, stability, and hope within our jobs. Is it always going to be perfect? Absolutely not. But if you are feeling like there's something missing in your job, you could take a look here because one of these things could be missing. And if there's trouble within your team or within or between you and someone else within your team or organization, one of these things could be lacking. And that could be what is going on and causing the conflict or problem. So for this one, it's a good idea to understand how things are working within your group and your department, but also how your needs are being met at work as well. Do you understand what yours are? And are you doing things to meet those needs as much as possible? And do the same with your coworkers. Understanding these 4 needs that everybody has will better allow you to self-regulate, establish improved and good work relationships, and understand if something is out of balance for you or one of your coworkers, and you may be able to help them out a little bit, which is great. So, this sense of self awareness, remember we talked about this earlier. In order to develop greater self awareness, a couple of things that we can do is do some journaling and self reflection at the end of your workday. And it doesn't have to be every single day, but maybe it's the end of the week, for example. What was good? What wasn't so good? What do we need to improve? Another great thing to reflect on with your team or with someone else you're working on a project with or your manager is to do an after action review, and assess at the end of a project what went well, what didn't go well, what can you improve, and what could we all improve. This will help you improve not just your work relationships, but your performance. And it invites feedback, which is great too. So you can get that feedback constructively from your manager or a coworker. And as part of this self-management, a couple of things that we want to suggest to think about that you can try to do is practicing self-care, emulate other people within your organization, who's really successful there, and what are the strengths and tools they have. We talked about the top one on the far left earlier, where if you're kind of worked up and upset or frustrated about something, deal with it, like think about it overnight and come back to it the next day. And if you have to have a conversation or give a presentation to someone else, it's a great idea to write down what you want to say in advance so that you can practice it and make sure it's coming across in the right way. Try to be thoughtful about your communication. Okay. We always give a free consult for anyone who is interested in our services. Please don't hesitate to reach out. The consult is to learn about coaching and how we can help you. We always give a discount to our webinar attendees too. This is the same email address as it is to obtain the slides as well. Let's talk about our third tool, and this is leveraging curiosity for greater emotional intelligence. So what we suggest to people as well is getting really good at asking powerful questions. And what we mean by this is we'll look at the right-hand side of the slide first. Really good questions that help people grow, develop, find their own answers, but also give you juicy, good, helpful information are what we call powerful questions. And they're very curious. There's no judgment in them. And if you look at the right-hand side of this slide, the basic gist of powerful questions is they're open-ended, they're kind of childlike, there's no judgment in them, and it allows the other person to figure things out on their own, vent, explain things a little bit more, identify a solution, or take greater responsibility for what they need to take responsibility for. The bottom line with powerful questions is they do not allow for a yes or no answer, and it assumes a positive outcome. And if you look at the left-hand side of the slide here are some examples. How can we handle this project effectively? What's the best way to accomplish this goal? Where can you use your strengths? You notice here, the other person can't answer yes or no to the question because it's open-ended like that. And also, there's no judgment there. And it assumes a positive outcome. And that's part of what I really love. There's no, this can't work, we're going to walk away type of thing. So powerful questions can be two types: information gathering, and there's some examples here, and they can just be very curious and open-ended. So what would working together effectively look like? What would be the best outcome? And information gathering would be more like you're looking for them to give you specific information versus like thinking out loud with you a little bit more. So those are the two types of what we call powerful questions. And when you're working on this idea of being curious with people instead of telling them what to do, being frustrated with them, etc., lean on asking questions more often. This is partly where self-management comes in on the left-hand side of this slide. It's so important because even if we're frustrated, in some cases, asking a question is going to be the better way to go. And you're going to have to hold back your judgment and focus on saying to yourself, I'm working towards understanding first and trying to empathize with this person, and then I will ask questions. This can help your emotional intelligence a ton. And if you're looking for a way to be assertive with someone, but in an effective way. So you need to either speak to someone about boundaries or ask them to do something a little bit differently or give them difficult feedback, let's say. The way to do that, kind of the 3-step formula, is to first, you'll notice, show understanding. So don't just barge in there and say, this needs to be different, but go in there and say, need to talk with you about something for a second. Is this an okay time? Like, I understand that this project may be a little bit difficult or there's a lot of change going on or whatever, but I need to, tell you that these 3 things need to be a little bit different. So you state the facts and then you offer a resolution, but give them time to volunteer and discuss a resolution as well. Because what if they have a different idea that could work even better for them? Come to a mutual agreement at the end of having this conversation. That can be really important as well. So tool number 3 is this sense of curiosity and leveraging that as much as possible. And finally, before we get to Q&A here in the next slide, self-care is critically important for enhanced emotional intelligence. You've heard that saying, right? It's when the airlines say, put your own oxygen mask on first, then help other people. You're not going to be emotionally intelligent if you're strung out, stressed, you're frustrated, etc. So that self-care really comes first. And this doesn't mean being selfish. Self-care is just critically important so that you can then be effective at work, help other people at work, pitch in and be a good team player. So a few of the things that you can start to work on in the next couple of weeks to be paying more attention to your emotional intelligence is do a quick daily check-in at the end of the day. How did things go? Review your accomplishments so that you've got a really good sense of what you accomplished that day. But you also can get a clear sense of what could be improved. Where was I really emotionally intelligent? And where could I improve on it a little bit? In terms of like taking care of yourself, whether it's eating right, exercising, getting outside, socializing, making sure you're connected to other people, that you've got a sense of meaning and belonging with your organization. Most people want at least a little bit of a sense of that. And keeping a journal, just even over time, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, to notice how you feel and how you're feeling at work on a regular basis can actually help you manage those emotions more. Sometimes writing things out can actually be a way for you to vent and get it off your chest. You haven't shared it with anybody. That's happened with me before too. I find that for me, writing things out helps me get clearer about how I actually feel and what I might want to say about that, because dumping it out of my head and getting it on paper helps me be a little bit more objective about, oh, okay, this is what's going on. This is what I could do differently. So journaling can be incredibly helpful there too. So let's talk about taking action. And I'd love it if before we have a few minutes for Q&A, if you would write down one action step that you will take in the next week, that would be fantastic. It could be creating an agreement, whether it's informal or formal, just you weave it into a conversation with a coworker. It could be using and practicing that active listening exercise. Like we said, having someone give you or tell you about a challenge that they're dealing with, and you're just listening and paraphrasing, and that's it. And if you'd like a copy of the slides, please feel free to reach out. I will put this in the chat box too, so that you have it. And please feel free to share your action steps as well, Jordan. I really appreciate that. Listening without judgment. That's a hard one. And I will admit it. I'm a judger on as personality type on the Myers-Briggs. And that doesn't always mean that I'm a judgmental person, but I can be like rigid about time sometimes. And I think I'm always looking for how can we improve? And so with my team, I've told them point blank, look, I am always trying to improve things. And if I'm trying to fix something that doesn't need to be fixed, that it's already working well, please feel free to tell me and say, we don't need to work on this. I think everything's okay. They have full permission to do that. And you got to tell them that they have permission, though. That's the thing. All right. So any questions before we go? And Jordan, I just, but as we're waiting too, did you have any announcements you wanted to make?
I do not. I just wanted to jump in here and just say we do have some questions coming in. And before I address those, I just want to say thank you for that excellent and thoughtful presentation, Hallie, and those practical tools and insights shared. So,
Oh, good. And
um,
let's see the polls too.
yeah, got the polls coming in.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I'm really glad that the difficulty regulating emotions is not on the list, which is great. It's the other two, because I think that one, the emotional, regulation can be the hardest one for people. And it looks like we've got some people that did create an agreement, which is awesome. And most people say they are employing effective listening skills, which was great. And thank you, Crystal, for saying this was great. Happy to be here. So Jordan, go ahead with questions.
Absolutely. And thank you again. So the first question that we have is you talked about that agreement. I'm just kind of jumping back off of that towards the top of the presentation.
Yeah.
This is a little bit more of a practical one. How often would you suggest an individual update that agreement for working with someone? Is that daily, monthly? What do you think about that?
I think that's a great question. And it's almost like I think we might be able to get away with, and I don't say that in a bad way, but it might be like quarterly. I think it depends on where you work and how often things are switching up and changing. So, worst case, if you work in a very like fast paced or an environment that changes a lot and you've got lots of different things going on, it could be like monthly. But outside of that, you could just kind of brush it off every quarter, give or take.
Yeah, thank you so much. And even detailing the differentiation between environments. Some of us are in faster paced environments and some of them are a little bit slower, right? And I really appreciate you calling that out. So speaking on the subject of environments, the next question I had uh, has to deal with those who may find themselves in a really fast pace or a really rapid work environment.
Yeah.
You spoke about something. You spoke about curiosity, and I really appreciate it. That was really awesome. What can you offer any more insights to anyone who's listening about how they can handle high stress moments if they do find themselves in one of those rapid environments?
Yep. So I would try to more often, it doesn't have to be every single time, but I would try to more often ask a question and say, oh, so for example, oh, I apologize. Is there something you need me to do differently?
Wow.
Or, oh, should we handle this a little bit differently?
Yeah.
And you may want to just do that right in the moment. And then later you can talk about things a little bit more in depth. But in the moment, if it was me, I would just try to diffuse for just a second, move on, and then you can deal with the bigger issue like at lunch or later in the day, that kind of thing, and just ask, a quick question and move on. And then you like operationally, if there needs to be like a process that needs to be changed or adjusted, that can be discussed when you both have some downtime or quiet time, or you ask the manager and say, hey, could you think about, or could we think about in our next meeting, for example, it seems like this keeps happening, can you give us some advice like that?
That's fantastic. That's a really good takeaway for our audience.
Yep.
So I don't know if you see it, but Crystal has a question here as well, talking about leadership and the and the role that EQ plays. That's funny because I had a question about, as leaders, how can you be better at, using EQ and what role does empathy? But this one seems like it's a little bit inverted, so I'll go ahead and read it off. It says, how can you assist with leadership who lacks EQ and lacks that self-awareness? How can we encourage people that working on EQ helps our bottom line, et cetera?
I was grinning about this, not because I think it's funny, but because I hear this a lot and because we can't control other people. So
Right.
one thing I would say is the more you model it, I think the better. So just you starting out as being a model for this, asking questions, etc. And then to go a step further, if you could maybe start asking them powerful questions about how things could be adjusted or improved, Not that that's going to force them to be more emotionally intelligent, but to try to force them to think in not a yes or no negative way, but more of a positive, like outcome way, as much as possible. And you can make some suggestions if you've got an issue and you are realizing that you need to feel like you're heard a little bit more. You could go ahead and talk with them about that and say, look, I've got something I'd like to discuss with you. I'm really not, feeling heard. And, can we talk about this a little bit more? Are there some adjustments we could make? So you can't control other people and what they do, obviously. But if you can try those 3 steps, I think like trying to infuse it within your team and within your organization as much as you can, and asking the right questions and making those suggestions for how to improve, hopefully they will take the bait a little bit and try to move in that direction. Oh, and you know what? I just thought of something really funny too. On the first slide, there's that book, Emotional Intelligence. You could buy the book and like put it out in the lunchroom. See if anybody picks it up. See what happens.
Maybe they'll pick it up. We'll see.
Yeah.
I love that answer. And thank you, Crystal. That's such a great question. And one of the things I keep hearing is that pattern of asking questions, what I hear you saying. It's so important. That's something I keep hearing, when it comes to addressing a lot of these issues. So thank you so much for that insight. I also really like the fact that you pointed out, sometimes those conversations are easier to happen in person, whether it be, that directness and having that empathy. So that's really great. So the last question I had from the audience here is basically for everyone watching, are there any practical ways that we can assess our own emotional intelligence? And then, going back on that concept, how do, maybe gauging it with aptitude tests, and how could we improve on that?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So I think the emotional intelligence book, I believe they've got little quizzes in there that will show you and kind of give you a sense of things. The
Awesome.
other thing is download the slides or get the slides from us. And remember where we talked about those 4 areas. You can also like rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 in each of those areas. And I honestly don't know like if there is one in particular I would suggest, but I'm 100%, 99% sure there's got to be some free emotional intelligence little quizzes online too. So
Yeah.
I would even just Google,
Yep.
emotional intelligence quiz. And even if it's basic, it could be really helpful.
Yeah, that's so good. And the power of the internet, right? We can Google it and find some of that information that we need.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And that concludes our presentation for today. Like Holly said, if you are interested in a free consult, please, 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 you have her contact information there. Please feel free to reach out. We really appreciate her joining us today. If you're watching and you are unaware, like I said, about our mission, please feel free to visit one of our 14 career centers across the North Georgia territory. I have the link in the chat there. We do have a wonderful staff that would love to meet you and greet you and help you wherever you are in your professional journey. So with that being said, Holly, thank you again just for this amazing info. And everyone out there, we really appreciate you joining us today. Until the next time, I hope you have a great Monday and a great rest of your week. Thank you.
Thank you.